Welcome back to Financial Foreplay. For those of you who have been listening along, you will know that the very last episode before this one, we covered a really important topic, and that topic was stopping fakes, stopping people from using your trademark and other protected assets, intellectual property that your business owns, stop them from using that stuff to pass off their own goods and services as being yours. Now, interestingly enough, I uncovered quite a lot when I started researching into this topic of intellectual property and the impact that it actually has financially on small businesses. And financially, it is actually quite a devastating impact in terms of small businesses because small businesses are at a unique disadvantage in many ways in defending these things. It's everyone pays roughly the same amount of money to protect their intellectual property assets, but the ability to actually defend them in a court of law or other mechanisms, you may be fighting, huge corporations here. It's an uneven playing ground for a lot of small businesses. And so that's why I wanted to do a follow-up today story on something that came to my attention that I thought this is actually going to be really, really valuable for anybody that has a small business out there, because this story is a cautionary tale, something that could very, very easily happen to you in your own small business. And you may not even be aware that this risk is out there and what the implications might be for you. So I'm really excited to have Tania Katsanis on the program today. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about her because she ran a multi-award-winning online business for 12 and a half years, and it was called Flowers by Fruit. And that was in Sydney, Australia. She built her business from the ground up, and it was really focused on delivering happiness, not only to her customers, but also for her team, right? Flowers by Fruit was a revolutionary business in that it sort of redefined this whole category of something called edible gifts. Tania and her team essentially created edible chocolate, strawberry, and fruit bouquets and arrangements that were suitable for lots of different occasions. And her brand and the business had a really loyal following and had built a very strong reputation for delivering quality products and for providing exceptional service. In addition to creating this business and building up that brand and that goodwill, had a registered trademark. But you may be a little bit surprised to hear what happened in her journey. So welcome to the program, Tania, and thank you so much for being so open and willing to come in and to help other businesses understand what the risks are and take them through your story.
Thank you, Rhonda. Linda, I appreciate having the opportunity now to share it, I guess, with a less emotional voice.
Yeah, fair. It's a few years out now, isn't it?
We closed in 2018, unfortunately, and it was the toughest decision I had made. But just to give you a bit of a story, and it was a great introduction, so thank you. Flowers by Fruit was an edible gift-giving business, and we did service Sydney and Greater Sydney as well. And we had a couple of issues since 2016, I think it was, we noticed sort of erratic changes to our sales. So for us, we're an occasion-driven business. So what that means is we know that our peaks are Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, and Christmas are our key sales days, if you like. And then we've got birthdays, wedding anniversaries, proposals, and everything in between. And I just started to notice in terms of our online ordering and telephone sales that it wasn't as easily for us to manage the trends or to see them. And I would see huge dips in our sales. And when we're talking dips, we're talking greater than 50% of a drop in sales on any given day. And then a week later, it would revert back to normal. So it was quite an interesting thing. And I couldn't understand what was going on. I was working with a couple of digital creative agencies. We met a few times to discuss our online marketing strategy, etc. And then one day I got a phone call from a customer saying, "Oh, g'day, have you guys sold the business?" I said, "No." She goes, "Well, every time I click on a Flowers by Fruit ad, I keep getting taken to another website." And I said, "Well, no, that's not us. Would you mind sending me the link?" And sure enough, this lovely lady sent me an email with a link that said Flowers by Fruit, and I was taken to a competitor's website. So we managed to contact the creative agency as well as Google and the business and confronted them. telling them this was deceitful behavior because, as you mentioned, Flowers by Fruit was a trademark. We made sure we could protect the brand because we had built quite a solid reputation. Thankfully, she desisted, but it didn't stop the trolls and the rest of the competitors doing the same thing. And then it kept coming. So we'd get different phone calls from different customers telling us, look, we're trying to order from you, but we can't. What's going on? I tried for 4 hours. I couldn't get through. I kept getting to it. It's not the products. Why have you changed your products? Well, no, we haven't changed our products. And then one day I received a very nasty and aggressive phone call from a customer who was absolutely livid at the product that was delivered for her mother's birthday. And she said the fruit was terrible. It was souring. It was dripping. It was just not to the quality that she was used to. So I said to her, okay, would you mind sending me a photo of the product that your mother received? So when I received that email, to my dismay, it wasn't our product. So I rang the lady back and I said, I'm sorry. Look, let's call her Jane. This is not us. Can you tell me where you purchased from? She goes, yes, it's you. It said Flowers by Fruit when I bought it. I said, can you please send me who it was from? So thankfully she sent me the online order and I sent it back and I circled all the relevant names and had a chat to her and said, well, it's not us. So she was quite embarrassed. But this was the trend that we were seeing constantly. So Google Shopping was quite profound in also doing this for us. So, for example, Google Shopping has, if you shop Flowers by Fruit, people also shopped here. So under the shopping for Flowers by Fruit, we had our competitors' products showing, which as a small business, our marketing budget isn't as large. So it was quite quick for our products to disappear early on in the day or the days that we thought customers would shop and our competitors would appear. So the issue I have with that, Rondalyn, is quite simple. When you're shopping for Flowers by Fruit, the only place you could actually ever buy our products was from my store. It wasn't from anybody else. So when I saw a competitor product under there with my name as the advertiser, it created a sense of fury, betrayal as well, because nothing that we did to protect the brand was being enforced online. So we had to then contact Google on a number of occasions saying, look, this is a breach of trademark. You cannot buy my product from these people. It's different if you have a pair of Nike shoes. I can buy Nike shoes from 1,000 different retailers, but you cannot buy Flowers by Fruit from any other store except Flowers by Fruit online or if you come into our store in Sydney. Again, the response from the people at Google were they would look into it, but effectively did nothing for a very long time. So for us, it then meant that we would try and contact our competitors directly, but it fell on deaf ears because, again, they didn't see any breaches because as long as Google allowed that to happen, they didn't see a problem with it. And because the online trademark laws are very different to, let's say, in real life, there's nothing you can do. So there's a couple of things that I, as a trademark or even as a business, have issue with the online space, if we can talk about that. If you do a search for a business, let's say, so if you're looking for Flowers by Fruit or if you're looking for Rondalyn Podcasts, if you're looking for a specific name, business or a product, a name or a business, organically, that's what should come up on the first page and nothing else. Advertisers potentially further down, but it needs to be promoted that way. However, if you're looking for a product or a service, so if I'm looking for edible arrangements or flowers or financial advice, then let the advertisers win. That's not an issue for me. Look, for us, 2018 was a very stressful year because it was a 2.5, 3-year battle that we were having for breaches of trademark. So we then rang our IP Australia to talk about how I was able to protect my trademark because I couldn't see any way forward. And the gentleman on the other end for IP Australia said, yes, I had a breaches of trademark and I had a case, but I needed to take Google on. Well, I can tell you as a small business who also uses that to support their family, I wasn't about to engage a barrister that would charge me a minimum of $10,000 to $20,000 a day to take on Google. Then I rang Google and talked to them again about this, and they apologized and said, yes, they saw a problem, but they didn't think that there was anything they could do. So I then made the decision to close my business, and I did that within 2 weeks. But the emotional turmoil, the financial impact on my business, we lost 25% revenue year on year since all those breaches. So I didn't think it was appropriate for us to actually sell the business. I didn't think it was appropriate to give that problem to somebody else, because at the end of the day, as a small business, as you mentioned, it's a losing battle because we don't have deep marketing pockets. So for us, it was the frustration and the anger for me was I built a business that had an excellent reputation, and because of that, I was being penalized. I did a good job, but it just meant that other people wanted a piece of the pie that I had created. Um,
Yeah,
so it was
and
very,
let's take it back to the basics, right? Because
yep,
when I interviewed Brian Goldberg in the very, last episode right before this one, we spent a lot of time talking a little bit about, what trademark was and why it's important to file for a trademark and all that stuff. But
yep.
when all of that is done and dusted, I think as a small business, you sort of have the mentality that if you have invested and created the goodwill and you have paid the money to protect the trademark, that on some level it shouldn't be this difficult to enforce it. Is that a fair?
Absolutely. No, but that's the whole reason it's your name that and your reputation that you're protecting. And that's the whole reason why there is trademark registration. It is that no one else has the right to use your name or your brand, to benefit themselves because it belongs to you. It is an association to you. And if you look at the McDonald's of the world, they have built their reputation around fast food service and burgers. So if anybody tried to use that name to promote themselves, they too would feel the wrath of this huge organization because it's their name and reputation that they're protecting.
Yeah, and fair enough. But it seems to me in your specific case, you had sort of the added wrinkle. So, in a typical trademark infringement scenario, you, as the owner
Yep.
of, your business, would be looking at the small business, or in some cases, perhaps even large business, that was directly infringing on your trademark. So, you went out and spoke to, I think it was a woman in the example that you gave, and told her that she was using your trademark. And 70%
Cease and
of
desist.
trademark
Yep.
infringement actually gets settled at that initial, yeah, cease and
Yeah.
desist, right? So
And I
you
think
had
I think
small win.
yeah, but what you can also realize is, let's say for two competitors. So I did have a trademark. If a person is in breach of a trademark in the real world, and let's say they used flowers by fruit in their marketing collateral and pamphlets that they issued to a consumer,
Yes.
it's a lot easier to get action by a governing body, like now in Sydney, for example, we have Department of Fair Trading, or to actually put in a complaint to them, and then they would manage that for you. However, on the online space, which is where Google and Facebook seem to have the control, you don't seem to have, as a small business, the rights that you should to protect something that you've built or you've paid for to protect. And that's where the biggest issue lies, for us for small business in general. When I say for us, because your voice is so small that they don't seem to care.
Well, and to be fair, in today's marketplace, that digital environment is massive.
It is
The
massive. And
sales
again,
potential is much greater, isn't it, online than just at the physical store?
100%. And that's where the little guy needs, and that's where I think if we go back to, let's talk about advertising online versus the traditional way. So in the olden days, you had the Yellow Pages, which was a hard copy book, which was so thick and you could pay to advertise. Now, this is where there's equal playing field versus an unequal playing field. So in the old days, you could say if your budget was $300, it would give you 3 lines, and you would say to them, I'd like it on the right hand page. But you knew for 12 months that $300 would give you 3/4 of the page down, two columns in. That's where your ad was. And if I had $5,000 to spend, I would have a quarter page ad, and that's what would stay for the 12 months because that's what I had paid for. If you move that advertising into the digital age, you'd be lucky if that $300 lasted you a week, and you don't know from one day to the next where that ad will be placed. So, and the big guys, basically, because obviously, let's say for example, flowers by fruit, you pay for per click. So words get valued. So depending on search terms, the more popular a search term through Google Ads, the more it will cost you to pay for that click. So for example, when we started flowers by fruit might have only been worth 10 cents. By the time we got through the 12 years, it might have been worth $4. So all that means is if people are doing a flowers by fruit search, it would cost if someone clicked on a flowers by fruit ad, it would cost that business $4 for that click. So you see
Yeah,
there's an imbalance there all of a sudden, where my $300 budget, which guaranteed me a 12-month ad in a directory, now is worth less than that. I'd probably get a week and a half or 2 weeks out of that if it's an active time of year for flowers by fruit. So, for example, for us, Mother's Day, which was massive, our second biggest day behind Valentine's Day, is obviously we're out there pushing. So Mother's Day might be worth $5 or $6. I cannot compete with the larger organisations for that, but yet they could put flowers by fruit in their budget
and to be
and their
fair,
key.
you shouldn't have to, right? So
No,
there's a difference between having a search term. Let's just say people are searching for, flower bouquets that contain fruit and
that's
bidding
correct.
on
That's a
that.
generic. That's right.
That's a generic search. Whereas flowers by fruit is a registered trademark. And so to
That's right.
me, it seems patently obvious on the face of it that Google should be playing ball here and actually protecting the registered or upholding the legislation that allows you to have protection over that term as it applies to where you've got it, right? So you obviously had a trademark right here in Australia, so
Yep.
it wouldn't apply to somebody in Iceland or
No,
somebody in Poland. But if somebody, in your own city or even in Melbourne wanted to pay for that search term, it shouldn't have been available to them.
it shouldn't have. And that's, as I said to you before when we were talking about the journey for flowers by fruit, is if someone or anybody, if someone is looking for a specific product or service, let the advertisers or anybody who wants to breach that. But if you're looking for a specific business because it's either through growth of word of mouth, because let's be honest, people talk, word of mouth is very big and Google reviews online are very big. If they're looking for a specific business, that is the search term or that is the trademark that should come up, and no other competitor should have the right to use that. And trademark just enforces that. But if it's a business name, I still think there should be some protection as well,
Yeah, fair enough.
regardless.
What were your specific experiences dealing with both Google and Facebook? Because I think they were slightly different, weren't they?
Yep. Okay. So when we're talking the difference between, let's say, talking with Google and relaying your issues as opposed to Facebook, Google at least had a customer service representative, and I use inverted commas for that, that you could relay your grievances or your concerns, but you still had to fill out online paperwork, for want of a better term, and provide evidence of your trademarks or whatever the case may be. When the issue came up with Facebook, you just had to fill out some things online, but nothing ever got done. You could actually never reach somebody. So, for example, one of our products through Facebook's little robots that go through was banned by Facebook because they considered it to be a risque product, an X-rated product, because we had a box of chocolate dipped strawberries called Deluxe Chocolate Berry Box Delight. So they assumed it was a sex toy. And we couldn't get that reversed. So, and it was very frustrating for someone like myself who's got one of my best-selling products that I'm trying to promote, being black banned because their search terms didn't, correlate the image to the actual product name, and it was quite frustrating. So I actually got nowhere with Facebook. At least with Google, you've got someone to talk to. Facebook offers nobody.
Yeah, fair enough. And in just even my own personal experience in having dealing with some of these platforms, they don't use common sense, right?
Oh no! If common
So
sense
you,
was
you can
common, we'd all be
provide
smart. So
you can provide your registration certificates, but if they think it might be in the too hard basket, or they maybe receive a little bit of pressure
mm.
from the infringing party, they are quick to throw their hands up and refuse to actually adjudicate or even investigate the matters thoroughly because they don't really want to get involved. They don't have the time to do it.
And let's be honest, the people that I spoke to at the base level customer service people, who are often given a script that probably goes through this flow chart. If the customer says yes, go here, or the customer says no, go here. So as many times I tried to escalate it, it was very difficult because they try and resolve it at that base level so it doesn't get escalated. So at the end result, although I did get somebody, and I in one of my conversations, I had a chuckle saying, yes, ma'am, we acknowledge that there's a problem, but it'll be resolved soon. And then the question then becomes is, well, how soon is soon? We had an issue with dynamic numbering, which is a completely a side issue altogether. But dynamic numbering is when you pay for Google AdWords will assign a different number to a particular ad. So that way, when you're doing your analytics, you can actually see the most effective ads that are judged by the number that was dialed. What ended up happening with the couple of the numbers that were assigned to a couple of our Google AdWords were people were being transferred to completely different businesses. So how this came to light for us was I got a phone call from someone who'd booked a Portaloo, and I'm thinking, no, sorry, sir, don't do Portaloos. You've got the wrong number. I'll get you the correct number. So the poor man rings the number that I gave him because that's what I found on a Google ad. I get him again. I went, okay, this explains why my phone's quiet. Why is my phone quiet? So I then rang a number that appeared on one of my Google ads, and I got transferred to Navy Health was the first one. And then the second time I rang on a different day, I got transferred to someone who sells fireplaces and wood heaters. So then that was a battle with my creative agency saying, this doesn't work. I need you to remove it. They fought with me saying, no, it does. So I had to actually physically record a videotape myself dialing the number that appeared on the Google ad, showing it on the screen of the phone to show everybody that I dialed the correct number, put it on speakerphone, show them that it wasn't coming through to my business phone, it was going to a completely different business. So that took six to 7 months for them to actually believe me and remove it.
Yeah, and I bet they didn't refund your money.
Oh, don't be silly. Don't be silly. That doesn't happen in the real world. And this is the whole, so there's a whole gamut of things that happen online that small businesses, unfortunately, can be victim because there's a couple of things here. One, we're too busy running our businesses to notice. Two, we don't understand because really there's no transparency in how algorithms or how advertising actually works. So we're just told if you put money in or if you do this, these are the results that you may or may not get, but we can't guarantee it. And every
And
business
that's
is like that.
and that's a really important point to note. I've often gone into Google and run a quick search of my registered trademarks because I have quite a
Yep.
number of them. And one of them in particular was showing up ads from various companies that I did not do business with, yet they were being tagged as being relevant to this Google search of my trademark.
Yep.
And it's very, very difficult from there to go backwards to try to ascertain, was it keywords or meta tags or
Mm.
hashtagging? What created that correlation in Google's mind? It's very, very difficult to substantiate that or come up with
It
proof.
is very difficult to substantiate that. And unfortunately, as I said, there is this wonderful wall of silence and that they would like to keep at bay. So this is where the frustration lies. And then I also learned something about positive links and negative links and and that penalizes your website. And negative links are usually people that make reference to your website or to your business but are actually not legitimate businesses or they're scammers. So I think I found something like 4,500 negative links. Now, how do you get rid of those? And that's another challenge for businesses because the other thing that you learn as you grow in an online sort of world with your business is that Google sends little robots out to see the relevance of your business to the products that you're selling plus the search terms to see whether you will rank high or whether you'll rank low. And that also has associations with positive links. So having your business registered in an online local directory is considered a positive link. But having someone with a link to your business in one of those scammers that offers those massive discount codes, and I'm not saying for a second that all of those are that's a negative one. So then you sort of get penalized or prioritized, but nobody alerts you to the fact that saying, hey, by the way, Rhonda Lynn, did you know that your website has 1,200 positive? Can you make sure that you're not associated with these people or this website? No one tells you that. So aside from having to
Yep.
protect your business name through trademarks, breaches, online has the world of advertising, protecting yourself and making yourself competitive in that landscape by being clever and effective. But Google doesn't allow that because of the spend. I know that more recently, and they've announced that they're actually joining in partnership with Shopify, and Shopify will allow small businesses to be seen. But again, the big red flag for me as a small business owner is then I feel compelled to use Shopify as my e-commerce platform, and that then doesn't give me choice.
Fair enough. So, knowing what you know, right, because this ultimately caused the demise of your business, which
Yes.
is the ultimate financial price that any small business owner can pay. Knowing what you know now, what would be your top tips for small business owners out there in terms of protecting their intellectual property and being smart about enforcing it?
I do think it's still very important to protect your business name. So I do still see the value in actually registering your trademark. I still see the relevance in, having that
Yeah.
online. The only difference I think I would do is because I did start my business in 2006, and back then the playing field in terms of the names of your business was to be a bit quirky and have it relevant to search terms. I probably wouldn't have named my business Flowers by Fruit. I would have named it something obscure that had nothing to do with that, and therefore it's harder to then have people use. So, for example, if you say flowers by fruit, Google doesn't see the word by as a search term, but they see the word. So that's a nothing word for them. It's a filler word. But the word flowers and the word fruit to them are search terms. So that's where they could argue. People are looking for flowers and looking for fruit. Well, actually, no, they're looking for my name because I created that name. So I would say if I had flowers by fruit, now I might have called it, um, Gizmo and Sassy's edible gifts, for example. And that way, it would have made it a lot more difficult to have that as a shopping stream. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because it's much easier it's much easier to prove that you should be the owner of traffic coming for a very unique term that no one else has, even conceived of.
100%. And the other thing too, though, and this is where it means when you do register your trademark, it does go through a period of, I think it's 9 months, where you get opposition for it. However, the assessors will look at whether or not that word is too generic or can be utilized, and therefore they could also decline it. The fact that we were able to register Flowers by Fruit as a trademark also meant that the assessors also felt that our name wasn't too generic. So we did have legs. So that's the other thing.
At the time, probably you were the only people using it. And
Yeah,
then
oh,
when
there was
people
floral.
realized how
Yeah,
popular and valuable, yeah, when
yeah,
people realize the value of it, that's usually when they will start using it.
without a doubt. And that's the biggest challenge that we had. But the other thing too is, and never ever forget, when you register your trademark, you're registering your logo, the words within your logo, and sometimes the font and the colors, if that's important to you. Because even what could happen to a business is someone might then decide that they want to sort of pull off your sort of thing and copy what you've done. So they might change the name slightly. It's still deceptive, but use the same font and the same color. So when you're just skimming it, looking at it very quickly, they can still confuse it as your own. So whatever you do, you still have to protect your business. So I would still say, um, protect everything. Still do. I wouldn't change any of that at all.
Would you change your approach into dealing with some of the infringers? Would you use perhaps different tactics, more aggressive tactics to get the word out there and to get more eyeballs on your story?
Look, I think it's all down to timing, Rondalyn. I think now there is a lot more because we've had the recent inquiry into Google and Facebook and how they. I think had I have had that issue now and not back then, I would say I would have a lot more attention. I actually tried to get attention drawn. I tried every tactic by approaching people first, dealing with Google. Then I went to politicians, I went to the media, and no one wanted to hear my story. And it was heartbreaking then once my business closed that I had people knocking at my door wanting to hear it. So I do think it all came down to timing because
Yeah.
I had my issues starting around 2016, possibly a couple of years earlier when Facebook commercialized around 2014, but it started to really appear around the 2016, 2017 mark. So I think it was timing for me because I was taking down the path of contact them directly, contact Google, went to politicians, went to the media, talked to a solicitor, and it just was like, well, you can't do anything about it. You can't prove it.
Fair enough. Well, I am so sorry that this happened to you. It actually breaks my heart because I can tell how much passion that you still have for a business that you haven't even been running
I
for,
know.
sort of 4 years. And it breaks my heart because it's it disempowers and discourages people from following their dreams.
It does, and it's also the other thing too. I think it's very, and you shouldn't be defeatist, and I'm not one to easily give up. So, but the other thing too is, and we forget about the financial implications. There's your mental health and your personal health, which also suffers because all small business owners, and I throw you into this mix as well. We put our heart and soul into something that we want to build because we are, not only do we believe in it, but we just want to do a good job, and we take pride in what we build. So I also had to weigh the financial costs, but also my family. I have a family, so I had to consider them, but also my mental health, because it nearly destroyed me and I didn't want that to be. So sometimes you just have to, as heartbreaking as it is, you just have to let it go. If and that's how I felt at the time. If it
Well,
happened to me now, might be a different situation.
I really am so grateful that you have been so vulnerable, so authentic and open, and just so willing to share this aspect of what was really a tough time for you, not just for you, but probably for your family members and everyone around you, your
Yep.
business. It was, a really, really tough time in your life. And I'm um, so grateful and so proud that you would come on and share those tips and strategies with everyone so that people know what their options are. And here's the thing: if anyone is sitting here listening to this program right now and you've got issues like this in your business, perhaps you are not sure, that you think that you might be able to register a trademark, or you don't know, reach out and ask. Perhaps you've already got a trademark and you're concerned that maybe somebody is using it. That could be online, it could be offline. It's so important to understand that it's not just something that impacts your business financially. As Tanya mentioned, these things can impact your mental health, they can impact your physical health, they can have far-reaching, implications for your whole life. And there's no point of suffering in silence. It makes sense to ask for help. It makes sense to tell your story. It makes sense to go and speak to a lawyer and figure out sort of where you stand with these things. Don't give up. If you're doing what you do and you're running your own business, your contribution is of value, and you therefore have a right to protect everything that you have invested and the resources that you have contributed to building that goodwill and building a fantastic business. So if you're in these sort of situations, it's okay to share. I felt I have benefited enormously from meeting you and just listening to your story, because a lot of what you are saying applies to things I've seen in my own business, and also things that I'm helping my clients with, helping them to deal with and move through and to protect their intellectual property and assets. So thank you so much. I mean, thank you just kind of doesn't really cut it, because I feel that we all owe you an enormous a debt of gratitude. And
I just want to see people succeed. And if this can make any impact or any change at all to the way that Google and IP Australia and whoever treats small businesses and the protection of their trademarks, then I think we've done something great. I really
yeah, and
do.
I think that's right. I think we're raising awareness, we're talking about it, we're creating the space for people to put their hand up and actually get some support or get some assistance to defend perhaps injustices that they might be dealing with in their own lives right now. So thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish it could be under different circumstances, but I've got to say, this isn't the first story that has come across my desk since I started talking about these topics on my podcast. So I have a sneaking suspicion that more of them are about to come out of the woodwork. And there is no need to have to use unlawfully someone else's trademark to promote your business in order to get ahead. If you are sitting there and you've got a story like this to share, please do reach out to me, and I'd be happy to listen and to see if there is something that can be gleaned by sharing that story with more people via the podcast. We should treat each other with a little bit of respect and integrity.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but sadly, not everyone is the same.
No, but I think 99% of us are. And it's about how do we mobilize those voices and stand together in support of businesses, because people miss out because Flowers by Fruit doesn't exist anymore. There are
I know.
people,
I know. Oh,
that
you say that, I do. I still get phone calls like, "Can you do something just for me?" Well, no.
I know, and that's the thing, people are missing out because your unique voice, your valuable contribution isn't out there as an option for consumers anymore because this happened to you. And that's a shame. And so I I look forward to working with you to raise our voices, even if it's just the two of us to start with, and whoever else will join us, but to raise our voices to say, this isn't okay. It's not okay if a small business does it to you, and it's not okay if it's Google or Facebook or one of the big platforms either. It's not okay.
No, and you're right. You're so right. And it's just nice to hear someone that feels that way. It is really good.
Yeah, look, there are probably many of us, but not enough people knew of the story. So I'm
Mm,
about giving a voice to those stories. So
it's all right. I thank you. I really appreciate you giving me the
great.
opportunity to help if I can. So thank you for that.